Now we've got Roddy. Yeah, cool. Well, thanks for that, guys. That's good. Excellent. So, Ali, I'm going to ask you, how's Fiji at the moment? Are you, you've got kids. Hey, are they going to school? Are they?
No, my daughter is out of school now. She's nearly 20.
Oh,
so, yeah.
Right.
So I don't have the same issue that a lot of people here in Fiji have, that their children haven't been in school since the beginning of April.
Right. So schools aren't open at the moment, or is it just more choice, I suppose?
No, they're not open. They are doing remote learning using various methods. So some fortunate children are doing it online, but the majority are having packs of homework, if you like, and learning sent home for them. But there is support through the TV and the internet as well.
Wow. Okay. Oh, it's so tricky, isn't it? Just trying to keep things going as best you can.
That's right. I mean, that's an issue for my staff,
Sure.
As for everybody's staff up here. But yeah, when the children can't go to school and then they're at home, and the parents are trying to work around them too. It's a bit tricky. And especially now we're doing the return back to the office. Right. Of course, and there's a childcare concern. So
yeah, absolutely. Hey, welcome in everyone. For those that have just joined us, we're just having a bit of a chit chat actually whilst we're waiting for others to join. So we'll kick off shortly, but we'll just wait for another couple of minutes. But no, Ali and I are just having a bit of a chat in the meantime. So feel free if anyone wants to say anything. Hi there, Verena. Good to see you join us. Right, and I'm seeing quite a lot of familiar names, actually. It's good to see that we've got lots of people coming back. Our webinars, I know, are getting quite popular these days. More and more people seem to be joining, so that's good. Hopefully we're hitting the spot with the topics that we're discussing. So that's good. Kia ora tātou, talawhalawa, bulavanaka, malawalele, kia ora ana, haro keta, and a warm welcome to this Businesslink Pacific webinar. Ko Barbara Wilkinson tako ingoa. I'm BLP's professional development advisor, and one of my roles at BLP is to support business advisors with the skills that they need to provide high quality advisory services. So it's my great pleasure to host this webinar series, which is on business advisor skills. In this series, we've actually been looking at the range of skills and the technical knowledge that our business advisors have and need in order to provide high quality business advice. So we've been exploring some of the key areas where getting good quality advice can really make a difference to business survival and growth. And of course, that's really, really important at the moment. So last month we spoke with Apiame Thegumalua and David Haberfield from HACCP Australia and Fiji. And for those of you that were here last week, you'll recall that they spoke about how they help businesses to access export markets by achieving international standards and certifications. And actually, in that session, David also brought up the importance of risk management. And so we thought we'd pick up on that topic and go a bit deeper into risk management and business continuity planning in this session. So today our guest is Ali Wilkinson from Tower Insurance. She's going to take us further into good risk management practices and business continuity planning. And she's going to highlight the importance of having the right insurance cover in place to make sure that your business is prepared for those unforeseeable events. So as usual, we expect that this webinar today is going to take perhaps just over an hour or so. So I hope you've got plenty of time to stay in with us because it's going to be a good one, I'm sure. Firstly, though, let me quickly go over the format of the webinar for today and also provide you with a very short update on BLP's activities. Okay, so now that we've started, can I ask that you please keep your microphones and cameras off, as this really helps us to ensure that everyone can hear the speaker. Please feel free, though, to ask questions throughout the webinar. You can do that by using the chat box, which you'll find in the top right-hand corner of your window. And we do welcome your thoughts and your comments throughout the webinar. There will also be a specific time for questions at the end. So please do pop your comments in the box as we go, if you wish. Now, we are also recording the webinar now, so you will be able to access and recap on it afterwards, along with all of our other webinars that we've done over the last little while. So you just need to go to the BLP portal, our website, and you search for webinars and you'll easily find the webinars page. Okay, so I'll just give you a really quick rundown of what we do here at Businesslink Pacific for those who may not be aware. So firstly, BLP is managed by DT Global and it's funded by the New Zealand government. We work in the 8 Pacific countries that you can see listed on this slide. We help SMEs to find suitable local advisors to help them with their business issues, and then we help them with the cost of those advisors' services through our subsidy scheme. Now, all BLP approved advisors go through a quality assurance process, which includes both a due diligence process and a competency assessment. So SMEs can be assured that they're getting really high quality professional advice. And we work through local professional advisors because we know that businesses do better when they have access to those people who are professionals and who are close by them. Now, BLP also has in-country representatives in each of our countries. Our business service managers are locally based, and it's their role to help both SMEs and business advisors to access and make full use of the suite of BLP services. Now, our services include our SME hub, where you can find a whole suite of business tools such as the diagnostic tool, the business health check, the business continuity planner, finance finder tool. These are all great tools that help SMEs to sort out important business issues. And there's also, of course, our finance facility, which helps SMEs to access finance. No doubt you're aware of the adaptation grants that BLP has recently offered. In fact, this has been our second round of grants that are currently being assessed at the moment. BLP also helps with concessionary lending and has developed partnerships with all the key financial institutions across the Pacific. Our services also include professional development and learning opportunities for advisors. And of course, we've got our webinars and podcasts, which are great resources and provide really interesting insights into doing business in the Pacific. So we also provide customised professional development for business advisors as well. So just very briefly, so far since we've been operating, we've now got over 130 approved advisory firms in our advisor network, and we've supported over 900 SMEs to access advisory services through our subsidy scheme. And you'll see from this slide that those tools that I spoke about earlier, the business health check, diagnostic, continuity planner, etc., they're being really well utilised. Almost 5,000 downloads of those tools, and that's fantastic. And our services have really supported the creation of new jobs. In fact, almost 800 new jobs, and great to see that almost half of those more than half of those jobs are taken up by women. So that's a great achievement. So that's a little bit about BLP. I'd now like to introduce you and welcome our guest today, Ali Wilkinson. Now, whilst we share the same surname, we're not actually related, although we did both start out in life in the UK and France, so we do have some things in common. Ali has a very in-depth knowledge and experience in risk management and business continuity planning, having spent almost all of her career in insurance. Now she's currently based in Tower's Fiji office, and she's the head of the Pacific operations for Tower. Her current focus is on streamlining systems to ensure customers have a great experience with Tower, and she has first-hand experience of managing an insurance company through major catastrophic events, such as the Canterbury earthquakes in New Zealand and several major cyclone events in the Pacific. She also has worldwide experience, having worked in the UK, in Europe, in Russia, as well as the Pacific region. So it's great having you here. Bula Ali, welcome along, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Bula Vinaka, Barbara.
It's great having you here. Now, Ali, I think you're also a bit of a linguist as well, aren't you? You speak a number of different languages.
I do.
What languages do you speak?
So French and English, of course, Spanish, German, some Russian, and I've been learning Fijian since I've been here.
Oh, wow. That's pretty amazing. I suppose that's quite reflective of the places that you've worked and lived, is it?
It is, but I didn't do so well in Southeast Asia. I just learned the very basics of Chinese, so just hello and goodbye and you're my friend, which is a very useful phrase.
Enough to get you by, hey?
That's right.
Yeah, okay. So tell us a little bit about your current role with Tower Insurance.
Okay, so thank you. As you said, I'm the head of Pacific operations for Tower. I look after all the back office functions for the 8 businesses that we've got across the region. So we have businesses in 7 of the same countries as you. We're not in Kiribati, but we are in American Samoa as well. The back office functions for people who are not in insurance, that's the different transactions that are involved in an insurance policy from the point the sale is made right the way until it cancels or lapses. And Pacific Operations, as you said, is based in Suva. We do underwriting, finance, claims, customer service. We've got specialist teams to do large events and loss adjusting, to do building surveying. And I'm really pleased that late last year we expanded our operations here to give customer service and claims handling for Tower's New Zealand customers. So at the moment, I'm in the process of building out our contact centre and telephony so that Suva becomes a third equal contact centre. We've recruited more than 20 people this year, even through the lockdown. And we've started to call ourselves internally as the Suva Service Centre, which really acknowledges the role we play for the Tower Group. And I also have responsibility for facilities and business continuity for the 11 branches across the country. So that, I guess, is what makes me a little bit qualified to help you today.
Oh, it sounds like you've got a big responsibility. Yeah, that's huge. And so Suva, the Super Suva Centre, is that what it is?
Suva Service Centre, but we'll add super on there as well. Why not?
Yeah, why not? Super Suva Service Centre. Wow, that's a bit of a mouthful. Okay, great. Now, tell us a little bit more about Tower in general, the operations across the Pacific.
So we are a New Zealand domiciled business. We're listed on the New Zealand and Australian Stock Exchange. We've been present in the Pacific since the late 1800s when we opened in Fiji, and we operate across those 8 countries, as I said. We've got over 35,000 customers across the region, and they're serviced by over 130 staff, and 80 of those are just in the Suva Service Centre. Across the Pacific, we insure both private individuals for their personal assets like house, boat, car, contents, the things that we would all recognise with insurance. But for businesses, we also offer insurances from SME right the way through to larger corporates, and the range of insurances we cover is not just for their assets, but also for things like lost profit, liability, theft by employees, and burglary. And we do that by working with brokers, or you can come in direct. We have a team of expert insurance consultants in each of those countries. We work with your advisors as well. Private individuals can buy and transact with us entirely digitally, and that's a recent thing here in Fiji, and we're rolling that out across the region over the next year. And I think, claims is a moment of truth when you buy your insurance policy. So I think it's important to say we paid out over $21 million New Zealand dollars in claims, and we responded to 3 Category 4 or above cyclones last year. But one of the things that's really important to me personally is that almost all of our local branches are entirely staffed and managed by locals, so they really understand the local markets and the issues faced by customers and businesses locally. But I should also say we're branded as NPI in American Samoa, Samoa and Tonga, just in case Tower is not recognised in those markets.
Right. So a different brand. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, actually, you mentioned about working with brokers, and Mansour's just popped a little question in the box there, and he said, can we apply? Can they apply for Tower Insurance Agency? Is that a possibility?
So it will depend on the terms that he's thinking of, but the best thing is to get in touch with me, and I will put him in touch with the right person after this.
Fantastic. Okay, thank you for that. And I know that Tower has recently partnered up with Businesslink Pacific as well, and I understand that you're offering some discounted rates to businesses that are affiliated with BLP. Can you tell us a bit more about that? I know that's perhaps not quite your area, but can you speak to that?
Yes, so we're really very pleased about this recent partnership. So we offer 10% discount to all of your members off their insurance policies. And to get that, they can access us via your portal. We're listed as an advisor. So make contact with us that way, and we'll have somebody expert in your field to contact you.
Oh, that sounds fantastic. So basically just go to the BLP portal, search for Tower, and make access, get access through to someone through our portal, and you'll get access to that discount. That sounds fantastic. And I mean, more than ever before, it's really important to have the right insurance cover in place right now, isn't it? So getting those discounts is great, and it's a really good way to support businesses at this difficult time. Okay, cool. Thank you for that. So let's kick into our first topic then. So our first topic is really about the difference between risk management and business continuity planning. And I see that you've separated out these two things. Can you explain the difference what the difference is between the two?
Yeah, absolutely. So both of them seek to maintain business resilience, but there are some key differences between the two. So business continuity is the process that builds the response framework for organizational resilience. And it's about aiming to continue a business's core functions and other operations whilst minimizing the impact of unplanned external events. So while there's a benefit in having the plan, actually the greatest benefit is the planning process, because by doing that, you can really understand what your business is about and what the risks are that face it. So you work through the intensity of what a crisis could be and how to respond, taking into account the different practical operational aspects of your business. So business continuity is a subset of risk management. So risk management, on the other hand, That's managing all kinds of uncertainty that might hinder the sustainable achievement of the overall objectives and results, not just those unplanned external events. So suffering business interruption due to an unplanned event is just one of those organizational risks. Risk management looks at things a little bit more strategically, and it is actually a best practice governance action. So very definitely should be on the radar of anybody on a board of directors.
Okay, so some of those more sort of intrinsic or inherent risks that any business carries. Can you tell us a little bit more about those?
Risk management, as I said, it's a discipline. It's driven on having a plan for your business strategy, and that's all about identifying, assessing, and preparing for uncertainty. So you work out what is the likelihood of something happening and what is the impact of that, and in combination, both of those can tell you the priority that you should place on devising any strategies for that.
Right.
Business continuity, as I said, falls under the category of operational risk, which is the risk of loss to your business due to inadequate or failed internal processes. And the only way to not be exposed to operational risk is to actually stop operating. It's part and parcel of having a business. Some examples of an operational risk would be cyber risk, disruption to your supply chain, sudden or large increases in the costs of your raw materials, wage inflation, any risks that are in relation to your premises or your assets, or if you're a tenant or you have tenants, any risks in relation to the ongoing continuity of those agreements. Machinery breakdowns, pandemics, natural disasters. That's the easy one to quantify. The next one that is perhaps most easily understood is perhaps health and safety risks, and that's most understood because it tends to be governed by legislation and strict duties for directors and managers of companies. It's very high profile when there's a failure, and none of us want to be responsible for an injury or a death in relation to our business, whether that's for your staff or for the general public. You've also got financial risks, and they can be quite broad and would include things like credit risk. So, for example, this is somebody who you're doing business with who fails to meet their financial obligations to you in accordance with agreed terms. So if you're a manufacturer and you're giving terms of trade of a month or longer to your customers, if those credit terms start to stretch out, that can start to have an impact on both your cash flow and your ability to actually continue to do business. And it could affect your credit risk with your financial institutions, such as your banks. Liquidity risk, it kind of falls out of that. That's related to your cash flow when you haven't got sufficient funds to continue operating. And then some companies have a market risk, which is where changes in markets such as foreign exchange or interest rates have an impact on either your cost of doing business or your revenues. Then you come into the risks associated with the quality of your products and services. And if you're a manufacturer, you have to also consider the quality of your raw materials or your products and your supply chain as well, and the impact that could have if you have a supply chain issue, or if you get a dud batch of components, for example, and you're not able to produce a quality product yourself. Reputation risks. I mean, we would all understand that if your product fails, that can be a big problem. But it could also be a reputation risk that arises from the behavior of your employees. Whether it's their behavior within the business environment or by association, if they are caught doing an illegal activity or they make inappropriate public statements on social media or other media. You've also could have a key man risk or a concentration of knowledge in a small pool of employees. And if you're dependent on them for critical tasks or critical processes, what would happen if those employees left for another job, or if they became ill, or if they moved to a competitor? What would you do? Could you continue to operate? Are you going to lose IP? So you need a succession plan in place for that. Legislative changes or compliance changes, they're less frequent, but they're really important to keep an eye on, because that can actually close down a business or grow, have a significant impact on the costs involved in having your business. So what would happen if your product or a raw material that you use in your product suddenly became illegal? Or was subject to new customs duties? Could your service be nationalised? Could new laws impose extra costs on or extra activities on the business? So that could be new regulations, new accounting standards, or new health and safety standards. And, you know, for example, for us here in Fiji, a couple of years ago, we used to do compulsory third-party motor insurance, which was nationalised by the government. So suddenly a product line was no longer available for us. So that's not an exhaustive list of the risks, and your own industry will have some more risks, but I believe you've got a checklist on your website that people can use as well.
Yeah, no, that's right. So what you're saying then is that any business really, no matter what they do, they kind of have these inherent or built-in or intrinsic types of risk that they need to manage, even if it's a low-risk kind of business. So, you know, whatever business you're in, you've always got to think about health and safety. You've always got to think about financials. All of these 6 things that you've identified, there are always potential risks around those things, even if your business is in good shape. So it's worthwhile just going through and thinking about those things and considering how you manage them. So that's risk management, and those are some of the issues that you've got to think about. What about business continuity then? What's that more about?
So business continuity is more around that operational side, and ensuring that when a very unforeseen event takes place, you can continue to operate. So risk management very much at the strategic level, and business continuity, that's what happens when an event occurs or an incident occurs. So we call it an incident when a risk is no longer a risk, it's an actual event that's happened.
Okay. So some of these uncontrollable events like pandemic, you know, they're all external things, I suppose, that could happen in your business. They're not really in your control. So you've got to be prepared for those, I suppose.
That's right, yeah. But there are some that are internal to your business as well. You know, you could have a production line and have a sudden breakdown of one of your production lines, you know, so your business continuity plan needs to take into account, well, what are we going to do if we can no longer produce our widgets on line 1 and line 2 is not ready for it? You know, you have to start to think about, well, how would I replace that particular manufacturing line?
Okay. All right. So moving on to the next topic then, can you share with us some ways that you can manage those risks and ways that you can prepare for those unforeseeable events?
Sure. So the main driver for carrying out both of these is to ensure that, you know, all your hard work in establishing and building your business doesn't get lost and your business remains really viable. Second reason for doing it is to have good governance and to ensure your business thrives and grows no matter what's thrown at it. And thirdly, you might have to do some of the risk management to satisfy a regulator or a trade body, or to provide reassurance to some of your customers, you know, who might have you as part of their risk management program as a supplier. There's 3 simple steps for running a risk management program. First, you identify all of the risks that might be present in your business using those categories I mentioned earlier and any others that are specific to your business. And some of those categories may only have one risk and some may not be relevant to you. But like I said earlier, the important thing is the planning, because that's where you get to explore widely and think laterally about what might present itself to your business that would have an impact on it operating. It's quite an exciting process, actually. You gather together your colleagues and have a brainstorm, but really get down into the nitty-gritty of every little step in your business and all of the different factors in your environment that could have an impact. And if you're operating across multiple countries, you don't just look at the country you're operating in, you look where you're importing from and exporting to as well. So once you've identified those risks, you then analyze each one of them for the impact and the likelihood, and that allows you to evaluate for your priority. And what's really useful at this stage is to understand what the business's risk appetite is. And sometimes you should define that up front, because while you're going through the process of identifying risks, that can start to distort your mind, and you start to sway your judgment on what you thought was your risk appetite. So the directors or the owners of the business will have certain levels of comfort about what risks they're comfortable existing within the business. So once you've done that process, you have a risk assessment matrix, and that's where you have the ability to see where you should place your efforts in developing a treatment for the risks. So treatments being controls which seek to eliminate, isolate, or mitigate each of those risks. And the first time you do it, like I said, it's a big process, but it's really, really fun. But once you've done the process, I recommend that you review your plan quarterly. You really need to get it down on paper, review it quarterly, because things change so rapidly. I mean, we're seeing that at the moment. It's a very fast world we're living in right now. And you need to do the horizon scan outwards. You need to do an inward review, see if anything's changed about the landscape you operate in, or the way you do business, or even the way that you would treat the risk. Because that monitoring is actually super critical as well, because it stops you being caught unawares. It allows you to add new risks in, but it also allows you to remove risks as your environment changes.
And I actually really like this approach. I think it's great. It's nice and simple, and actually it's the same for those that were on the webinar last month. It's the same approach that David discussed with us last time. So that identifying, assessing, and controlling risks. So can you share with us some ways that businesses do that? The ways that they do identify, assess, and control risks?
The easiest is to create a register that lists all of your risks. So that's the big brainstorm. That's where you really unpick and get into the very detail of your processes and your systems and your business environment. You create that risk matrix. So, for example, you would look at what would be the impact of this thing happening. So, for example, if a cyclone wiped out your building, what the impact is going to be significant. So you'll score that, you'll give it a specific number. But then you start to look at what is the likelihood. And, if you're in certain countries, a cyclone is less likely to occur than if you're in, say, Vanuatu or Fiji. So your likelihood score would be much lower if you were in one of those countries. You then create that risk matrix, as we saw on the previous slide, which enables you to have, based on your risk appetite, a higher or lower level of score. And in particular, think about those past events. A near miss is gold, because it didn't actually happen and cause an issue, but it was kind of like a warning sign that you need to do something, or you need to set a process in place or put some other contingency in place. Involving your staff is also really important. So they can often they know what's happening on the ground. So you often find that the management, they can look at what was likely to happen politically, or with a regulator, or with a trade body, or with those import or export markets, and your staff will tell you on the ground what could be the day-to-day issues that arise.
Especially like health and safety, they're usually really hot on those, aren't they?
Absolutely. And for me, it's about the communication and the way you present this, because this is all about making the business stronger and building resilience, so that you can be around and remain as an employer and as a part of your community for a longer period, way into the future. And so bringing staff on board and encouraging this in a non-blame environment is really important, just like health and safety, as you say. It's really important to keep records. Because that enables you to demonstrate, in particular where there's a legislative requirement, such as health and safety, but also for you to demonstrate to your customers and your suppliers and your business owners that you have got these checks in place, and you are keeping records and monitoring it regularly. And it's really important to do the reporting. And I think of this as, a continuous improvement process. I think the important thing on the control strategies, though, is that sometimes you can eliminate them, the risk. It's actually very, very rare that you can eliminate your operational risk. Like I said before, the only way to eliminate it is to cease operating, and that's not the purpose of a business. So then it becomes about isolating it, which means that it doesn't affect other parts of your business, or it's about minimizing it so that the impact will be smaller. So for an example could be that you need to have identified a second premises, just in case something happens to your first premises, so that you can continue to operate. It could be that you create an agreement, even with a competitor, if you're a manufacturer, whereby if one or other of you has an issue, you will assist each other. So, there's lots of opportunities here for networking as well, and for building that resilience into your business.
And I guess that same sort of approach also applies with hazard management, doesn't it? Like so often, if you think about it, you can eliminate a number of hazards that might appear in your business. But if you can't, then you can isolate them, or you can minimize them in other ways by putting up barriers or guards, or whatever it may be. So so that's a really great approach, that kind of eliminate or isolate or minimize approach. Okay, so business continuity planning then. It's become very important since COVID-19, and I guess most of us didn't really see COVID-19 coming, and certainly we didn't plan for it. But I suppose it's never too late to put a business continuity plan in place, even if it is after the event. And I mentioned before that BLP has got a business continuity planning tool, and that's on our website. So that helps SMEs to identify the sorts of things that they might need to strengthen, or perhaps to put in place in their business to make sure that it can continue. So that tool is on the BLP website. You just need to go there and look for business continuity planner, and you'll find it. But in your experience, Ali, then, what are the most important things that you should include in a business continuity plan?
Okay, can I just pick up on something you said about it's never too late? Because, the pandemic has gone on a lot longer than we were expecting it to. And the pandemic as it is right now is very different to as it was 6 months ago, 12 months ago, 18 months ago. And this is a great example where your business continuity plan evolves over time, and as you are constantly evaluating. So effectively, once you kick in your business continuity plan and you start to manage that, keeping your business on track, you do need to keep looking at, well, what has changed? for example, in Fiji, we now have to vaccinate all of our staff. That was a big change. We had to do that in order to keep our business going. So, yeah, and we, as an insurance company, unforeseen events are at the core of what we do.
Yeah.
We don't just have to plan our own business operations to continue in the event of any unforeseen event, but we have to ensure that our customers who've also been affected by the event are able to continue to be helped. So one of the things that we do, I know this sounds super nerdy, but we have Business Continuity Month, which is September right now. And the reason we picked September is because it's just before the cyclone season. But if so we're reviewing all of our business continuity plans across the region. I'm doing that with each of our country managers. We're seeing what's changed since last year, and we're ensuring that we've got enough time to be ready for the cyclone season. And maybe as an example, one of the things that we've learned is, since we had our plans in place last year, we no longer need to have an alternate premises, because we've moved all of our IT up into the cloud. So we don't need to ensure that we're constantly able to go into an office and connect using a cable to our server. So the different aspects of a business continuity plan relate to the different operational aspects that you've got. So you need to look at it from a people and a premises, your suppliers, your customers, communications with any regulator or trade body that you might have, and alternate working arrangements that you might have in there. We divide all of that across a very small group of people. We have what we call our emergency management team. We meet regularly during an event or when we see an event start to emerge. As I said, we've got it a tight team. That way we can make nimble decisions. And one of the things that we do is we use a number of apps to help us. We use Microsoft Teams, but if you don't want to use Microsoft Teams, you can use a spreadsheet, or you can use Microsoft To Do. There's a number of different planners. Google in their suite have got some planners as well. And what that's meant is that we don't have to reinvent the wheel. So we've looked at staff preparedness. We've looked at and so that includes, do our staff have the kit to take home? Do they have modems at home that they can use to access the internet? We also ensure that the office is ready to be locked down and made secure. Simple things such as having standardized templates for comms, or standardized posters we can put in the door that tell our customers what to do. How are we going to communicate with our customers? We look at whether any health and safety changes are needed. Do we need to buy PPE? Do we need to have other equipment? Or do we, for example, need to arrange carpooling for our staff to be able to get to the office? So we had to do that while the buses were not quite so frequent here in Fiji. So these are the different areas of the business that we've looked at and made very clear checklists that we go through each and every time. And it's as simple as, do you have a generator? Can you keep your power going? What about security for your building? What about all of the other utilities and communications?
I think that's a really great list that you've got there, and those contents, it just helps you to think about, what do you need to put in place for your business, and of course it is about thinking of those what if scenarios. What if there was an earthquake right now? What would we do, for example? And I think you're right. Often businesses find it really valuable to enact these scenarios, and it's fun to see how well they'd cope in that situation. Actually, funny story. I remember visiting one of my clients once when they were in the middle of an emergency drill, and I was sitting at reception, waiting to meet with someone, and I could hear the staff in the office behind me talking about an earthquake at another of their sites, and there were a number of staff that were missing, and the office was destroyed, and the server was down, and the tsunami was coming, and all these, catastrophic things that were happening. And I was sitting there feeling quite scared, and so I asked the receptionist if I should leave. It's obviously not a great time for me to be meeting with somebody, but thankfully he told me not to worry. It was just a drill. They were doing some scenario planning. Look, I must admit my heart was absolutely racing with the conversations that I was hearing. But hey, what a great way to test out to test out your systems, but not just your systems, but how you work together as a team in those sorts of events, because in those events that teamwork is so critical. We often all think about what we would do individually, but actually it's the way that you work together that's also really important. So I think scenario planning is a great way to identify what things you need to do what things you need to prepare for. And so it just made me think of that scenario, and I was feeling really scared.
Oh my! See, they didn't include in their business continuity plan that they notified people of the simulation any visitors. They probably forgot about visitors in their plan. But you're right. The communication side is super critical. Your customers need to know. How can they get hold of you? What's going to happen? Is there going to be service interruption? Your staff need to know specifically what's expected of each and every one of them. And it's sometimes the things that get overlooked are the simple things like having a calling tree and having all of your key contacts for your staff and your suppliers and your customers, having that stored somewhere else. The notes function on your phone is fantastic because you can have that with you. Where would we be 10 years ago without a smartphone? Don't underestimate the power that can have, even if you just take photographs and have a little folder on your phone with them.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And I think, what you've got there in that emergency response actions, the communications, like you mentioned a phone tree. That's just such a simple way of getting information out in a crisis situation in a very quick way. So, I'm going to phone 5 people. Those 5 people are going to phone 5 people, whatever it is. And suddenly, very quickly, you've got the information out that needs to get out. That's such a great way. And if people know who they're going to phone in advance, you're prepared. So great little suggestion there.
Absolutely. And expectations. So staff need to know what's expected of them. So, we're really clear. We expect you to contact us by a certain time using any of these methods. And if we don't hear from you, we're sending somebody in, so they know very clearly what's expected. And that in itself prevents the risk of hurt or injury or just inefficiencies.
And I think that comes back to that, that teamwork. You've really touched on. This is how you get that good teamwork happening, because you made the expectations clear about what everybody's supposed to do. So, no, that's great. Okay, so of course, one of the most important things that businesses can do to mitigate risks and to prepare for uncontrollable events is to get insurance cover. So. Can you tell us what are the sorts of things that businesses can insure against, and just tell us, how that works?
Okay, sure. So, obviously I'm going to say this, but insurance is critical to help companies get back on their feet after an unforeseen event. And most people will think of the building or the contents or the stock and vehicles or machinery. They're the most typical known insurances. But business interruption is really quite important. So that helps to cover any lost profits when your business can't operate as a result of an unforeseen event. But it also can cover the increased cost of working. So maybe the event has occurred, but with a few subtle changes that you're coming out of your business continuity plan, you can actually continue to operate and continue to have your revenues flowing. So in that case, in that instance, what a business interruption kicks in is for your increased costs of working. So that might be you need to rent some machinery, a forklift truck, or you need to find an alternate location, or you may need extra staff because you've got to do things manually. And so that business interruption will help you get back on your feet as you get back to a normal situation. And then you've got people-related risks. As we said before, key man, what would happen if somebody became ill in your business, or even worse, they were to die? How would your business continue to operate? You're going to have to go find other expertise, and that can sometimes cost a lot more when you're having to get a contractor in for a short period. So key man insurance can kick in there. But what if you're a sole trader and you become unwell or unable to work for a limited period, but you know that you're going to be able to come back up to speed later on? So income protection can come in there, and you can obviously use some of that income protection to pay for somebody else to come and stand in your business while you're not able to work. And then in some markets, health insurance is really quite critical because it reduces that risk on certain on staff absences. If staff are at home ill, they can get medically treated and back to work sooner. And then depending on the nature of your business, there's specialized insurances. So if you're in construction, contract works is really, really important. That takes away the big risks associated with you running a building project. And often you need contract works in order to even get the contract in the first place. If you're a professional, an engineer, an architect, a lawyer, an accountant, or some kind of business advisor, having professional indemnity, or even a hairdresser, actually, that would be a good one. You need professional indemnity. So if things go wrong with the service or advice that you've given, which can happen despite all best endeavors and education, professional indemnity can assist if you're taken to court by one of your customers.
So I think that's actually a really important one to talk about, particularly for those people that are business advisors on the webinar today. So what you're saying then is this is a policy that you can get if you effectively give bad advice, or if your customer follows your advice and something bad happens to them. That's what that is, isn't it?
It is. I mean, there is an expectation that you will be appropriately educated and be giving advice very prudently. But we all do that, don't we, when we're, let's not question anybody's professional integrity. But yeah, that's where professional indemnity insurance can play a big role.
So quite a good one for business advisors to think about. Yeah, very important. And actually, again, there's various contracts that you won't get if you don't have that type of insurance. So you'll miss out on a number of opportunities if you don't have that type of insurance in place.
That's right. Yes. And so professional indemnity and public liability sort of go hand in hand in protecting the personal interests of the principles of a business. So that, public liability, you need that if you have the public coming onto your premises for any reason. Otherwise, you run the risk of being sued personally for any injuries that may occur.
So,
sorry.
Yeah. No, so I was just going to say again, so, worth checking out. And again, don't forget about that 10% discount on the premiums that you can get if you go through the BLP portal. So, no, that's cool. But tell me, you also kind of bundle up a few of the different policies or areas of cover for businesses as well, don't you? Like you customize it to a fair degree, don't you?
That's right, yes. So whether you're an SME or whether you're a larger business, we have a product that would be a bundled product for you. We have a product at the moment called Smart Pack that covers the different kinds of business insurance needs. So it covers burglary, theft by employees, your property, your vehicle, and a number of other if you have money is stolen from your business as well. So that's a great product. It's available across most of the region, and if it's not available locally, it will be within the next month or two.
Okay. Fantastic. Okay, so for a business needing insurance or thinking about what insurance cover they should get, what should they do? And yeah, can you tell us a little bit more about getting the best out of a claim?
Okay, so in the unfortunate event that you do have a claim, the most important thing is to make sure that any people, employees or public, are safe. That's our number one point. You then start to make arrangements to make your premises safe, so prevent any further damage or prevent any injury to anybody who happens to attend. And then we really ask you to document everything that you can. So take photos, take videos in abundance. You can never have too many. They will be really, really helpful. They're going to help speed up your claim assessment. And if there's any disagreement, they can help to reach a conclusion to that agreement. So detailed photos, broad photos, show context, and show very specifics as well. That's really, really important. And especially get photos of the surroundings, because that can often tell a story as well. We will ask you for documentation. So we'll ask you for the documentation to support the fact that you owned that particular asset, or what the nature of the asset was, or the value of the asset. So any receipts or invoices or records that you've got, keep a scanned copy, because the worst thing that can happen is that evidence being destroyed by the very event that you're making a claim for. So in a secondary location, paper copy, even better, on the cloud, so that you've got access to that. We are going to need good financial records if you're claiming for business interruption. So really good and accurate sale and purchase records are really important, and once again backed up off-site. And if you are in the hospitality game, you're going to need to have good, solid evidence of bookings as well, not just inquiries, but actual bookings. So please make sure that those records are kept really, really good. So once you've made everything safe, once you've taken the photos and videos, make contact with us, because there's a lot of things that we might be doing in the community if it's been a large event, but that we can also do with you. And we can assist in getting things made safe, whether that's security fences to prevent theft, or tarpaulins, or scaffolding and other things to prevent any further damage. And also your advisor. Your advisor can be really helpful, whether they help with the claim or just for you to have an independent person to talk to about the nature of cover that you may or may not have with your policy versus the nature of your losses. And
I guess they can also help with that, where to from here, that business continuity planning. What do we now do? What changes do we need to make?
Absolutely, yeah. And the sooner you can let us know, the sooner we can help you put in place your business continuity plan.
Yeah. Okay. Fantastic. Okay. Well, I'm going to open up the floor now for questions. I think, Ali, you've provided a very clear and comprehensive information for us, and really important things for businesses to think about. Does anyone have any further questions or comments? Richard, I see you've popped something in there. So Richard says, we're finding that many banks and financial institutions across the Pacific region are now starting to only deal with a short list of reputable underwriters or brokers by way of panel. This is part of their due diligence and risk profile modelling and methodology. So he's asking, how is Tower Group placed in taking advantage of this situation and opportunity, and what are some of the key points of difference for Tower over their competitors?
I think the most important thing here is that we've been around for a long time, and we're very financially stable, and we are very solvent, and we can call on our New Zealand parent and on our reinsurers for at that moment of truth, which is the point for claiming. So the reason the banks are making a shortlist is because they want to be sure that if there is a damage to an asset that they've loaned money on, that their loan will be fulfilled, and that's why they want somebody reputable. So we have a good, solid financial credit rating. We have reserves well in excess of what our mandatory regulated reserves are, and our approach is one of looking how can this claim fit into the policy rather than how can we decline the claim. There's two big different schools of insurers, and we're definitely in the first one. I think I answered the question. How do we compare? Well, we're across the region. We have really great products, and our pricing is appropriate. So it's really important in insurance not to buy super cheap. It's important to buy a policy that's appropriately priced, because if it is incredibly cheap, you have to start asking questions about whether they're going to pay the claim at the end or whether they're capable of paying the claim.
And those points are really important. I mean, I remember a few years ago, my house was flooded, and thankfully I did have insurance. But because it's such a major event, similar to the earthquakes, that often these kind of events, they can bring an insurance company to their knees. And so if you haven't got that stability to be able to cope in those situations where you've got a lot of claims, then that's a really important factor. For me, when my house got flooded, thankfully I did get support from the insurance company. But the interesting thing was I couldn't get another policy after that. People wouldn't insure my house afterwards because it was too high risk in a flood area. And so, some of these sorts of issues often do happen. So you do have to think carefully about who you're going to insure yourself with. The last thing you want is to be paying out premiums year after year after year. And then when you do make a claim, you find that they're not in a position to support you during that claim to the level that you need. So really important comments there. Anybody else got any other questions? Sandra, hey, thank you so much for popping in the survey, which I'll talk about shortly. We do really like getting people's feedback on our webinar, so thank you for popping the link in there. Now, Navin has got another question or comment. To all the risks covered as per policy, have there been any changes made for the pandemic period, like any new clauses added for what's not covered due to the pandemic? Oh, that's a good question, Navin.
So it will come as no surprise that we stopped selling travel insurance. So that was the first thing. We didn't add any clauses because there already was a pandemic clause in the policies. The key thing is that it actually only affected, of the policies that we covered, it only affected travel and business interruption. So we have seen an impact without us making changes of the fact that, so for business interruption, you can only claim losses that that would have eventuated. You can't claim, it's not a kind of a windfall policy where you can say, well, I want to claim a bigger amount of profits because that's what I was expecting. So one of the things that we have seen for hospitality policies is that because the borders were closed, hotels did not have the anticipated number of bookings that they were going to have following the cyclones last year. So in particular, this affected for Cyclone Harold, and we did have a couple of companies that had damage that received a much smaller amount of money, but that was not about the insurance policy. That was about the fact that the borders were closed, and had the cyclone not damaged their property, they would have had lower revenues anyway. So I guess the short answer is no, we haven't added any new clauses on at all.
great. And I just noticed that we've got a couple of hands up there, so I'm not sure which came in first, but Ranish, did you want to say something there? Just unmute yourself if you've got a question. No? Okay, what about you, Ben? You've got a hand raised as well. Do you have a question? Again, if you want to just unmute your mic and ask your question if you've got one. Okay, maybe that was just a little slip of the mouse. Janice has got a question. Does the Smart Pack include health insurance for employees?
No, it doesn't. So health insurance is not something that Tower offers. We do workers' compensation in a couple of markets, but we don't offer health insurance.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. Any other questions, anyone? Good questions coming through. Anything else that you want to ask Ali whilst she's with us? Yeah, now's your chance. Okay, well, look, thanks, Ali. As I say, I think that's been, really comprehensive, and it's such an important topic to highlight for businesses, particularly after the pandemic. And it's never too late to start your business continuity planning. And in fact, if you had one, go and review it again as soon as you can. If there's no more questions, Ali, perhaps I could just ask you to perhaps summarize or highlight some of the key points that you've raised in today's session.
Business continuity planning is a fun activity. The planning is one of the best parts of it. It can give you some real insights into your business, because it allows you to look at your business from all different angles, and so there are sometimes some aside learnings that you have or opportunities identified while you're doing the process. It's really important to do it thoroughly and regularly. Understand what your risk appetite is up front before you start to work on these things. There's lots of resources online if you're not sure where to start. You've got the BLP advisors, but there are resources online too where you can see what other companies are looking at and what they think are the issues. So yeah, just keep your eye on the horizon at all times. It's very much one eye out here and one eye on your business, just making sure you're aware of what's coming, what might be emerging, and then being ready for it. And just be ready to pivot very quickly.
Pivot. Yeah, that pivot word, it's so important, isn't it?
It is, yes.
Absolutely. No, thanks again, Ali. I've really enjoyed discussing this topic with you. And it is such an important topic. We all know only too well from COVID how our world can change in a moment. And certainly, those things that we've spent working on over years, that could be destroyed in an absolute flash. So it certainly pays to consider in advance how you can protect your assets and achievements and prepare so that you can get through catastrophic events. Now, this slide has got a few links that I think will be useful if you're thinking about business continuity planning and you're thinking about getting insurance. We also did a podcast with one of Ali's colleagues at Tower that was with Veilawa Rewasaliwa. Oh gosh,
very good.
He's the head of your digital distribution, I think, isn't he, across the Pacific? So that's well worth a listen to if you get chance. Now, next month, our webinar is going to be on diversity, equity, and inclusion, and what business advisors can do to support SMEs to be more inclusive. So thank you again. Thanks very much. Don't forget, before you leave the webinar today, please, 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 can I ask you to just have a look in that message box. You'll see Sandra's popped in the link to our little questionnaire. It's a very short survey. It'll take you less than 5 minutes, but it really does help us to know whether we're on the right track with our webinars. And it helps us to make sure that we're covering the topics that you need. So thanks very much, everyone, for participating. Thank you, Ali. That now concludes our webinar for today. Malawa Pito, Whawhatai Lava. Thank you, Tomas, Vinaka, Metaki Mayata, and looking forward to seeing you all again next month. Mā te wā.